All right, I started playing at this point, and it turns out that was the relative low of the couple of previous weeks. And there were 170 something thousand people at max, 163, 153, 151. The most concurrent players it had ever had. I started playing around this point. It never really got there again, of course, and it's just been downhill ever since. Normally there's a bump from Saturday to Sunday, Saturday to Sunday, Saturday to Sunday. Today, there was not that bump. Saturday, there were 47,177 concurrent players at the peak. Today, there were 46,751, so about 400 fewer. And now, currently, an hour after the peak, there's 44,395 playing. So yeah, it's been a pretty significant drop off. This is when the NDAs were lifted. Previous low of 24,000, previous peak of 44. And yeah, it was basically just the streamers and influencers or whoever, had early access. And people were allowed to invite their friends. Surprisingly fell off kind of hard after only a few days. NDAs lifted, and then yeah, it's just been downhill since then. The lowest point of 37, almost 38,000. I want to start by talking about the people who will stick around regardless. No matter how bad the game gets, no matter how bad the experience is, they will be there. Those people are called Harbingers, but we'll get to that in a second. Watching Deathy's stream the other day, there was somebody complaining about not feeling like they're doing good enough, something, this, that, and the other. I don't remember exactly what the context was at that point because it was the last kind of thing that made me leave the stream and decide to do something else for a little while. Yeah, people at the top, obviously, are what, Ice Frog, the developer from Dota 2, bounces around. And, whether or not they're having a good time, I think, is ultimately what they're balancing the game around. And then of course there will be people who stick around all the time. This person though in Deathy's stream complained about being only Ascendant 4 or 5. I forgot exactly which one it was. I do remember pulling up this website and looking up really quickly because these are all 1% down to here, and then these are 2 and 3%. So he's easily within the top 2% of all players, and this was during a time when there were still roughly 50,000 players at peak. So being in the top, I did the math, I'll pull up some nicer graphics hopefully, but 1,275 people in the game of 50,000 players. And, assuming that they had probably been higher MMR before ranked released and all of that stuff, they were probably near the top when there were 70, 80,000, 90,000 people playing. So despite the fact that more people have left and the upper tiers have become more and more concentrated because they're the only people who've been consistently staying around, this person did not feel like they were doing well enough. They just had a disconnect from the reality of the situation, is what it ultimately boils down to. They thought they were doing bad, and they're in the top 2% of all players. And I'm not looking for an echo chamber to reflect all of my views, but I do want people to at least acknowledge when things are not good. So people who pick products that fail are called harbingers of failure. An MIT study was done a long time ago that came up with this name. They find that people who buy things in this failure category are good at picking out products that will fail. Like they come up with these weird ass examples of Colgate products and watermelon Oreos. But ultimately, there are some people who will buy stuff no matter what it is, or they will pay for things regardless of its quality or desirability. Analyze 6 years worth of transaction data, blah 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 blah. 25% of customers, so 1 out of 4 people is going to enjoy a thing regardless of how crappy it is. In a Reddit post I said I would give Deadlock 7 years. It's not going to make it that long if things keep going this way, so we'll see. But yes, the more they buy a product, the more likely it is to fail. So the harder these people go for their thing, the more likely it is to fail. Blizzard, you know, had some problems. Overwatch League failed because, you know, it didn't make money. Why did it not make money? Because the game was not enjoyable. Not a fun game because they had that 6v6 balance, and just then they tried to force it into team compositions and came out with Overwatch 2, but Overwatch 2 faltering success. That was in 2023, you know. Now they're bringing back Classic and things aren't going well. I stopped playing Overwatch about 7 months after its release because they refused to make changes that years later caused all of these problems for them. Sure, they were able to get money out of people and loot boxes and pay for skins and all that stuff. That's what Blizzard does, right? They're experts at that. But the fact, you know, it does drop off after. I have no idea when Overwatch released. It's been ages. And like I said, I stopped playing after 7 months. So, you know, there are people who will stick around.